Hey, no, 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 don't you start. Hello, 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 hello. We are going live. I don't know if anybody sees this. Do 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 do. Do 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 do. Do 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 do. Do 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 do. Alright, hello. I think everybody can hear me now. And if you can, great. Yay, and we are live. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Sunday morning-ish, Shenanigans, afternoon, whatever time of day it is for you, Shenanigans. I am the Cabbage Warrior, and we are going to be finishing 80 days today. So, we're on 60 days in. We've got 20 days to get from San Francisco over to London and back. Okay. So, San Francisco seemed less a city and more a ravenous beast bent on consumption of everything, even of itself. Within this ever-expanding city limits and enormous steam-powered drills and diggers flattened hills, the building works made it tricky to talk to anyone. Enormous steam-powered drills and diggers flattened hills, straightened roads, reformed neighborhoods, and dumped the resulting rubble and stone into Mission Bay. I headed towards Chinatown to eat. It was a warren of crowded wooden and brick houses, temples, businesses, herbalists, laundries, and market stalls selling fruit and flowers. Hang on just a sec. I'm going to adjust the sound. No, we don't need Google Analytics. Okay. Alrighty. Brightly colored lanterns illuminated the streets. I regard people with some interest. Brightly colored lanterns illuminated the streets, and little draconic automata spewing black smoke called the attention of passers-by to restaurants and gambling houses. Children played games in the streets, many dressed in woolen bobble hats and coats over their Changshans and Sheongsems. I think that's how I'm butchering these names like hell. It is something fierce to be regarded. What did I no. Large groups of men stood around smoking, drinking green tea, and calling to each other good-naturedly. I felt quite at home. I had traveled around more than half the world after all. What was one more foreignness in such a foreign place as America? I decided to approach a young man with a cute ponytail who was relaxing outside a small shop with his arms outstretched. He seemed to me to be a laborer, despite his slender frame. His arms were heavily muscled. His name was Jing Ho, and he was enjoying his single day off from working on the Transcontinental Railway to New York. "What are you doing with your day?" I inquired pleasantly. He said, "Sitting here, smoking. I would see my family, but," he shrugged, "I've been away from home for a long time. Still, I should not complain. At least I have a job." What would he do once the railway was complete? Alas, I had little time to ponder this, as I had to bid him a hasty goodbye and return to my master. "Day 60, Monsieur Fogg," murmured that night in his sleep, "and still some distance yet to travel." Let's plan. We need to figure out how to... Don't have enough... There we go. Market's open. Let's get some... Crapola, I am screwed. I'll explore again, because the bank will be open. Oh, yay. I sloped towards the recently constructed long bridge, which was crowded with families out for a stroll and people fishing for silvery smelt with the long poles. In the water was a jangle of rowing boats racing each other and boatmen taking passengers out to Mission Rock. Cheers and good-natured shouts emitted from the halfway house in the middle of the bridge. I scoured the water for boats. I peered at the halfway house and surmised that from the revels I saw spilling out from its doors that it was some manner of drinking den. A man, red-faced and somewhat the worse for drink, bumped into me. I excused myself politely, and he made an apology in return, slinging an arm around my shoulders. "Oh, hello," he exclaimed. "You don't sound like you are from around here." "You don't sound American either," I retorted. "No matter, I was Dutch once in a past life, but now I am as American as President Grant. This is a land of newcomers. You are a prospector?" "I am a traveler," I said. "I am traveling around the world." He laughed. "Oh, yeah? And I'm a Navajo chief." "Actually," I leaned in conspiratively, "I am a jewel thief on the run." If you don't want to tell me that's your business," he said finally. "You don't need to make up tall tales." A brown-skinned woman slipped her arm into his. I regarded her. She was wearing a ruffled walking dress in the latest European style, but with a short tasseled jacket embroidered with the patterns of her tribe. "Ah, my manners," he shook his ruddy face. "I am Anders, and this is my wife, Jenny." "A pleasure to meet you." I kissed her hand. She was surprised but smiled. "Always a pleasure to meet Anders' friends." She looked askance at the whiskey flask in his hands, but seemed to find me unobjectionable. I hesitated, the obvious question about her origins on the tip of my tongue. "Are you—" I let my rather uncouth question trail off in embarrassment. She laughed with full-throated pleasure. "I am of the Modoc tribe, what the new Americans call Indians." Jenny rolled her eyes. "I do not mind your surprise. Most of my tribe has been taken to the Klamath Reservation in Oregon." "Sounds idyllic," I remarked. The two froze a little. "No, I think you have misunderstood," she replied coolly. Anders whispered something into Jenny's ear, and she laughed, though I feared I had opened an old wound with my prying questions. I nodded and found my way back to Monsieur Fogg, who was sitting drinking tea with a disconsolate frown. "It tastes like soap," he remarked, but would say no more. "Need to go to the bank." The manager. I regarded the manager of the local financial institution, a well-dressed, calm gentleman who met us with the greedy professionals. "We require 1,000 pounds, I declared. "Okay, on Monday to collect your funds." Passed the night. But we kept ourselves occupied. We took a room and settled in. I afforded my master every service. Good. There's nothing in the market that's worth it. Another night, the clock hung. The clock was forever ticking upwards with the last few hours of the evening. Oh, hey. Perhaps if I had done that, we would have been able to do that. Receive our funds. We collected our funds, and the manager whispered, "Well, okay." We are on the Transcontinental Railway. Yay. We were lucky to arrive in San Francisco just in time to catch a journey along the as-yet unfinished Transcontinental Express, which would take us as far as Burlington in 5 days, with only a handful of stops along the way. Monsieur Fogg, unfortunately, was not feeling lucky, having eaten some rather speculative oysters in the afternoon when away from my watchful eye. I was most solicitous and brought my master cool claws and weak sugared tea till he pronounced that he felt much recovered. Why did they go down? The first day aboard was enjoyable enough. American trains could clearly not compete with their European counterparts, but it was amusing to see them try. The posters claimed Pullman's Palace sleeping cars, but they were more like places to keep cattle. If reasonably well-to-do cattle. We sipped cool beer as we rattled through a long stretch of desert in the shadow of tall mountains. I attended to Monsieur Fogg and his delicate stomach, which was not entirely better today. Good. Let's see if we can learn. Good 18s, Monsieur Durant. Burlington. Burlington to Cheyenne. Is there a route from Burlington to Cheyenne? I think you're out of luck. No apologies. Atlanta. Our fellow passengers were a curious mix of gold and silver prospectors, homesteaders, farmers from all corners of the world, Mormons, missionaries, soldiers, and stiff-necked gentry of various sorts. I gave a young black woman with a deep round red bonnet and an infectious smile, a wide smile. Her name was Diana. I am meeting my husband in Cheyenne, she told me. He did construction work in New York, but New York isn't safe anymore. We have enough money to move now. Why isn't it safe? I queried innocently, having only the broad strokes of American news and history. You did not hear of the draft riots in Europe? She asked, wonderingly. New York has always had Confederate sympathies, and when the Union began drafting New Yorkers, they rioted. They killed and burned black homes. My husband has never felt safe since, but now, we're moving to Cheyenne, she smiled, nearly glowing with happiness. I told her some tales of my adventures, which seemed to amuse her greatly. As the afternoon wore into evening, we passed by Ogden, close to Salt Lake City. We watched as passengers disembarked, glimpsing the fertile fields and well-tended ranches out of the windows of the train. Keep talking. We already know Omaha. You can obtain cotton flowers in Omaha. You can sell for profit in Havana. Okay, that's nice, but that doesn't help me. Can you travel from Burlington to... I'm not sure. Okay, bye, Diana. Whatever. Today, a fellow with a painfully trimmed mustache and impeccable suit approached me outside the lavatory. I nodded at him companionably, and his thin lips parted in a contained grin. I am Felix Granger. He said, You are a puzzle. I was flattered. Monsieur moi, humble passepartout? I am no more a puzzle than the sun's rise in the east. Truly I am the simplest of men. Oh no, do tell me how you came to be on the transcontinental. Thereby hangs a tale. I can tell, good sir. He was merely interested in me and my adventures, and I saw no reason not to enlighten him in great and florid detail. His eyebrows raised higher and higher during my recitation. Then, he said unsurely, this is your first time in America? Oh, yes, I grinned. A very strange place. You will allow, monsieur? He seemed surprised. Are we so strange? He stroked his trim mustache. Maybe we are at that. By God. We stopped at Cheyenne, Wyoming, for a few hours in the evening. The trim mustache fellow disembarked with a 6-foot-tall woman who wore the latest slim-trimmed trained skirts and a pistol tucked into her waistband. We watched, none the wiser. At luncheon, I asked a sturdy-looking prospector who looked out of the carriage with an expression of palpable awe. That's Esther Hobart Morris, the first woman justice of the peace in all of America, he said fervently. Ain't she something? The trim mustache fellow boarded the train again before the last whistle blew, his face drawn and anxious. Greetings, Felix Passepartout. Burlington. I've been told you can sail aboard the Dark Queen from Burlington to New Orleans, but it's slow going. I have no idea why. Okay, so let's talk to Winnipeg. Some say the quickest way to Winnipeg from here is via Washington, but tell me, do you prefer rain or snow? Rain. Are you quite sure you're not English? Chicago. Keep talking. No, that's gonna go back. These are gonna go backwards. I'm trying to get to New York. I've only got 13 days left. This is, yeah. We were held up by outlaws. They dragged tree trunks over the line and forced the train to halt. Before boarding, brandishing pistols and sabers, they went carriage to carriage, demanding valuables. I looked at my master, who had a certain glint in his eye, and I did not doubt that he wished to resist these outlaws' demands. Being a man with the deepest respect for the law, the lead bandit fired his gun into the air. "The name," he declared, "is Jesse James. Now give me everything you've got." The saber lifted to my throat. I handed him over my wallet. What else could I do? Monsieur James smiled a toothy smile and tossed me 10 pounds back in return. "Buy yourself new shoes with that," he said as he proceeded to steal my shoes. The saber point moved on. Now it was Monsieur Fogg's neck. "What about you? You look good for it." I dreaded what Monsieur Fogg's response would be. His gallantry would never acquiesce to such a man. Monsieur Fogg cleared his throat. "I would trouble you to lower your sword," he said. I listened, fearful. "You'd trouble me, would you?" Jesse James replied. "Somehow I doubt you would." Monsieur Fogg stiffened a little, his eyes narrow. I could see he was about to do something terribly rash. I watched carefully. Monsieur Fogg was standing stiff as a post, the sword pointed directly at his Adam's apple. "I have boxed for my country," he declared. I covered my eyes. I could not watch. Just at that moment, a group of soldiers headed by the trim-mustached fellow stormed aboard our carriage, pistols drawn. Jesse James lifted his sword and held up his hands. I watched curiously as he was led away by the agents. Then the steam engine restarted, and we were soon on our way. Not much worse for wear, although our valuables were impounded as evidence. We did not have time to wait for the case to come to trial, but the officers compensated us a little, to the tune of 531 pounds. A kind fellow passenger gave me a spare pair of shoes, and a few hours later we reached Burlington. Ooh. Okay, we're in Burlington, so... Burlington was situated on the west bank of the Mississippi River and had grown to prominence along with the steamboats that paddled up and down the Longstretch River. The construction of the Burlington Railway route had caused a temporary influx of Chinese and Irish laborers into the town, where many of them drank and generally had a good time. Good times were a scarce commodity in Burlington, or so it seemed to me. The town distinguishes itself in my memory as the place where I managed to burn one of Monsieur Fogg's shirts. He was not terribly understanding. I apologized most profusely, and Monsieur Fogg informed me that he preferred proper action to tedious apologies. "This is growing to be a habit, Portsmouth. I do not like it." Ooh. Okay. It's gonna be the best bet, so... I don't know if I'm gonna make it. Day 68, before the night ended. I went out to explore a little and took full advantage of some distance from Master. When I returned, both my spirits and I fancy his were much improved. There's nothing worth it in here. We boarded the Dark Queen, a twin-decked steam boiler stern-wheeler bound for New Orleans. The Mississippi was famed for the luxury of her steamboats, but also for their unfortunate tendency towards catastrophic boiler explosion. I felt lucky, though, and quite certain that nothing ill would befall us on our journey to Crescent City. We were certainly due a good turn, were we not? Siege of Acapulco worsens. Ooh. The common rooms and lounges of the Dark Queen were full of gamblers enticing passengers into games of dice or cards. The river ports had been passing more and more regulation, and the cheats and crooks had all fled to the unregulated waters of the Mississippi to ply their trade. A fool and his money are soon parted. So the saying went. I had little pity to waste on fools, though Monsieur Fogg clearly found the entire operation distasteful. Okay. Good evenings, Captain, you slimy dog. They're building that thing out on the island there. Okay. This is gonna be interesting. Captain Latour was quite clearly cozy with the gamblers and had something of their attitude himself. I'll wager I can get us to New Orleans in 3 days rather than 4, he shouted to the room at large. Who will take the wager? We could use an extra day, and the captain seemed quite sure of himself. £100 on it, I called. The captain whooped before lopping off to the engine room. Watch and learn, my friends. You'll see a record made today. Okay. What new routes did I discover? Captain Latour ordered the Calliope to play a tune as he mustered the crew and gave them the order to push the engines to their maximum limit. The coal shovelers scowled at the extra work involved, but the captain ignored them magnanimously. Gosh, that is... I swear I can read, guys. I swear. Good God. Big words just... They scare me a bit. They do scare me. The Dark Queen's crew seemed competent enough, but as the boilers whistled and screamed, the ship began to make ominous keening noises. I had observed the preparations with somewhat of a jaundiced eye. Keep shoveling, Captain Latour shouted, tapping dials and muttering orders. He squeezed more oil into the engine crank. We'll be in New Orleans by sundown. Which was when something began to make a screaming noise. I turned about and, looking astern, seeing smoke issuing from a crank in the metal. And then... It was too late. The rear boiler exploded. The entire ship seemed to shudder and convulse. The sailors screamed and wept and burned. It was hell, in the literal rather than metaphysical sense. And I was in it. We did not reach New Orleans. Shit. None of the sailors died yesterday, though some no doubt wished they had. As much chastened, Captain Latour moored the ship and organized the boats to take them to the doctors ashore. Monsieur Fogg and I were unharmed, at least physically, but there's no music or laughter on the Dark Queen's deck. And even the hardened gamblers played in respectful silence. I just fooked us over. We've got 8 days. We're not making it in 80. The Dark Queen continued her journey down the Mississippi, though at a crawling pace. Captain Latour ordered only 2 of the 5 remaining boilers fired, and I had to offer double pay to the stokers to induce them. It is my fault, I confessed to Monsieur Fogg in English. I took his damned wager. My master regarded me thoughtfully. Captain Latour took a gamble, and this time he lost. That is all. But you are a gambling man, I said, thinking of the screams of the sailors. I realized as much the very first day you took me into your service. What's the difference? There is none, Monsieur Fogg said calmly after a moment's consideration. I merely have a better calculation of the odds. We docked at New Orleans when the sun was low in the sky, glinting over the brackish water of the river, bathing the French and Spanish colonial. The captain made a beeline for us like a weary ghost, but I made sure to avoid him, hustling Monsieur Fogg onto the wharf before our ghastly wager might be settled. I wanted neither his self-pity nor his advice. Well, we're going to have to do something here. The manager needs 700 tomorrow. New routes discovered. Oh, sorry. Okay. The telltale was too smooth. It would curl up in a shady spot under a tree. Cruel and hard. Yeah, I'll fix that in a little bit. Get our funds and get the hell out of here. I met Death in a smoke-wreathed, red-lit bar in New Orleans as the jazz band struck up another tune. He offered to buy me a bourbon. Holy mother of heaven, I blasphemed succinctly as some other patron snickered. Death pulled off his mask to reveal handsome cafe au lait features and dark green eyes, and then extended a skeletal hand to me. A fine costume, I remarked. Merci, mon cher. I am Death at our neighborhood Mardi Gras, and I am practicing my role. He took my proffered hand and brought the back of it to his lips for a gallant kiss. He flicked me a rather unmistakable look under his dark lashes. To be so clearly desired by Death was unnerving. I found my feet shaking and stepped back. He tilted his face to the side. "Do you find my color displeasing?" he asked with a lazy smile. "My master will be missing me." "You have a master?" he replied with an amused curl to his lips. "So you are a slave, then? A valet?" "You, mon cher, know little of slavery," Death replied tersely, resuming his mask. The chill of his cold fingers on my face sent a thrill of fear through me. Abandoning dignity, I ran from the bar, nerves rattling like knuckle bones in a cup. We're going there because I've got that trombone, and that's going to get there. The Piedmont Airline from New Orleans was not, in fact, an airline at all, but according to its advertising, the fastest railway in America. What could be better for getting us to the edge of the Atlantic? Winning our bet would now require a miracle, but we still had every chance of a decent showing. We settled ourselves in a carriage with one other occupant, an extremely large man who introduced himself as Charlie Sullivan, a lad from Birmingham, who had grown into something the size of a warehouse building, who was most impressively sculpted, especially around the neck and upper arms. His mustaches were nonetheless perfect. I asked what had taken him to New Orleans, and he grunted, "Boxing." "You fought in a competition?" I interpreted. "There was an exhibition. I won. Third round knockout." I gulped. However, Monsieur Fogg's interest had been increasingly sharply throughout the conversation. "You are trained?" he demanded, keenly, "or self-taught?" "I've got a manager," Sullivan replied. "He tells me what to hit." Excellent, excellent, Monsieur Fogg enthused. "I want to hear all about it." I sat back and enjoyed the conversation. The details of boxing are more intricate than one might expect. and hearing the business of cut and thrust delivered in Sullivan's so very English tones was quite informative. Little did I know how the details I heard would come to be of use to me. It was day 76. We barely had 100 hours remaining to return home. That Mr. Sullivan will, I think, go very far indeed, Monsieur Fogg opined as I brought him his kippers from the dining car. He seemed to have the physique, I suggested. Not just the physique, my master replied. Physique is not the secret. His description of the transferal of weight from foot to foot was very well understood indeed. So you are a boxer, monsieur? I saw the shutters of his conversation beginning to come down. I went to school, yes. You mean you boxed as a child? He stiffened. The suggestion that he had ever been a child was, I quickly saw, well beyond the pale, even for one as intimate as I. You should fight him, he said. I laughed at my master's joke, but Monsieur Fogg, as ever, was not joking. He looked up at me with some surprise. Is something the matter? Forgive me, it sounded as though you said I should... Forgive me, it sounded as though you said I should fight Monsieur Sullivan. Indeed, he forked another forkful. You needn't be alarmed. I can teach you to box. I rolled back my sleeves. I'm sure you can, Monsieur Fogg, I replied, and I am a quick learner. That has never been true, but I saw no other choice. Excellent, Monsieur Fogg put down his paper. I have arranged for space in the guard's van. Come. When had he done this? I do not know. I merely followed, and there was Sullivan, striped to the waist, doing his warm-up exercise. Bis pour tout, he greeted me through that thick leather mouth guard. Sullivan, I declared meatily as I removed my own shirt and tried to listen as my master provided some pointers. And then the fight began. Sullivan was a tough opponent, and if he chose to swing hard, he would burn me unless I defended myself. But he would not be able to slug on every swing. I would have to pick my moments to attack. To begin with, I kept my fists up, matching Fogg's demonstration from across the car. Just as Sullivan punched hard, the blow landed against my defense. I shook it off as best I could. A small crowd had gathered to watch the fight, and they murmured with excitement. Strength and stamina are different, Monsieur Fogg called to me from the side. Your strength will come back if you swing lightly, but your stamina, once gone, will leave you out cold. I nodded, to show I had heard. I saw Sullivan's shoulder move back. He's making a block, Monsieur Fogg murmured, so don't swing hard. I threw a light punch with a quick, decisive move. While Sullivan lifted his defenses, I knocked him back a little. We were both still lively, although he was faring a little better than me. He will have regained some muster from that block, my master shouted, so be warned. So next I raised my guard, once more protecting my face. Sullivan punched hard. I caught the punch neatly. Neither of us was badly worn, though he was looking better than me. Well done. He won't be able to swing again like that again, my master shouted. Then I threw a heavy punch, putting all my weight behind the blow, just as Sullivan snapped his arms up to block. I pushed him a little. We were both still energetic, although he was faring a little better than me. I heard rather than saw the money changing hands. Spectators were betting on me. Now it was my turn. I got ready to duck and dodge, once more protecting my face while Sullivan punched hard. I deflected the impact breathlessly. I was fading fast and could not take much more. Excellent, now's the time to get him, my master shouted. I threw a heavy punch, putting all my weight behind the blow. Sullivan made a quick jab. I overpowered him, landing a sting. We were both all but equally matched, tiring but still eyeing each other warily. Watch it, the next swing may be harder, my master called. I no longer had the energy for a heavy swing. I brought up my defenses, once more protecting my face, just as Sullivan delivered a stinging punch. I dodged neatly. The fight was by no means settled. The crowd murmured and whispered. Next I threw a light punch and a quick decisive move, but I had timed it poorly. Sullivan swung low, the blow slipping past my guard. He was tiring, certainly, but I was all but on my knees. He was wearing himself out, my master cried. I saw his arms tense. Then I got ready to duck and dodge, once more protecting my face. Sullivan brought up his block. We circled each other nervously. I could not take much more of this. One more hit would likely finish me off. Now it was my turn. I threw a light punch, quick, decisive. Sullivan I knocked his strength a bit. Sullivan was weak, but he knew he had me. I raised my guard once more, protecting my face. The blow landed against my defense. It was too much. I slumped to the ground. Generous hands lifted me to my feet and put my jacket on my head. "Oh, sure, Monsieur Fogg. Though I am afraid we have lost some money." Well, we've got $2,100 coming in on New York. Wait. Ooh, what did I do there? Why did I spark a riot? I awoke, still smarting from my boxing match with Sullivan, and my master most generously decided he would fetch breakfast. You're most kind, monsieur. Indeed, he replied, and we cannot have you dropping the tray. He returned with black coffee and well-buttered toast. A most considerate choice to bring a Frenchman, or at least so I thought, until he began to eat the toast himself and drank the coffee in his sleep. We arrived into New York later that day. I struggled to lift the case with my tired arms, and we staggered off the train. Fuck. I was pickpocketed. I seized the thief's hand still in my finger. You tangled with the wrong Frenchman, I exclaimed in triumph, only to immediately fumble, getting my other hand caught inside the cuff of my coat. So that as the creature in my grasp squirmed, for it was but a 10-year-old girl, pulled me off my feet, leaving me robbed and in the gutter to boot. I immediately located her, who regarded me with a curious but not entirely unfriendly expression, most perturbed, I fancy, by my rather fetching attire. And what's the matter with you? He asked. Escaped from the circus? Well, yes, once, I replied, but somewhat taken aback by the policeman's purse. Clearly I was in the presence of a remarkable particular. But that is not the matter at hand. Oh, yeah? I have been robbed, I declared, appalled. The man looked at me with some sympathy before replying. Don't worry, sir. You'll probably find those clothes are worth something on the second-hand market. With that, he moved away along the street, swinging his truncheon and whistling. I returned to the hotel defeated, and soon realized the girl had also used the conversation with the police officer to dip into my pockets once more. I was dejected and quite without funds. We were already without funds, so it didn't matter. And I was forced to explain the incident to Monsieur Fogg, who was not in the least sympathetic. Anything that jeopardizes our journey is unwelcome, but everything in this realm seems arrayed against us now. Isn't there a market here? Like, how am I supposed to sell the trombone? Oh my gosh. I have failed. We have lost the wager because oh, well. That would be how I sell it here. Oh, and then now the market shows up. Okay. Yay, okay, so we've got that. I have boned us. Okay. Yeah, we failed. Okay, the ice wind was a pendulously large Savickar automotive that wanted to fly 4 or 5 miles high and had to be hauled down to the docks by a team of 30 or 40 steam winches. Studious, blah 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 blah. Sorry, I'm just trying to get done as fast as possible. Okay. Good. Let's befriend the crew. Ew, gosh. Okay. Size of your ship, so okay. I'm just wanting to be done now. Do not explore far because we need to get home. That is our plan. Yeah, I know, but at this point, we're gonna be like day 87. The Silver Seal was a smaller ship than the Ice Wind had been, and a Gaiac boat. We loaded. How long will it take? I asked the captain. 3 days. Can't be done any faster. 3 days seemed like a very long time, and I could see Monsieur Fogg's expression that he thought it was as much as well. The ocean tore along beneath us. I enjoyed talking to no one. There was nothing I needed to know. No one to charm, flatter, or beguile into giving us aid. There was only the wind and time. We can control neither. Monsieur Fogg looked out at the observation deck with the perfect calm. Though the wager was lost, he was no doubt ruined. I watched him closely, for fear he might do something drastic. I spent the remaining time watching every possible danger. One eye on the crew, the other on the ship, ready to react to the slightest trouble. But nothing broke the peacefulness of our day. We tethered at the airship dock in Hyde Park and felt, for the first time in 87 days, the feel of English soil under our shoes. At long last, we had returned to London. I hailed one of the steam carriages idling on the banks of the Serpentine in Hyde Park. To the Reform Club, I instructed. My master shook his head. To Savile Row, he corrected calmly and turned his face to the window. I have most assuredly lost my wager. Certain fog thickened the yellow light of the gas lamps as we drove through the streets of London. I searched for some words to comfort my master, but found nothing but platitudes forming themselves on my tongue. I swallowed them down. We had lost the wager, and by only a handful of days. One fewer delay, one speedier journey, and we might have returned to London in glorious triumph rather than ignominy. Ignominy, gosh. My master entered his domicile with his habitual tranquility, though he instructed me to leave the window shut so that his neighbors would not mark his return. I prepared his supper, and he ate heartily, as if he were not utterly ruined. Passepartout, he began. Yes, Monsieur Fogg? In the silence that followed, I counted up the vast sums expended and all the obstacles which we had overcome and those which had delayed us. As a valet, you have been of indifferent use to me, Passepartout, he said, as though remarking upon the weather. But more importantly, you have circumnavigated the globe as my companion. Despite the unfortunate protraction of our journey, he added, it was no small feat. And what will you do now, monsieur? I asked, trying to emulate my master's coolness and aplomb. My course, Passepartout, Monsieur Fogg interjected smoothly, is fully decided upon. We must attempt the journey around the world once more. Once more? I cried. Indeed, Monsieur Fogg said implacably, an intent light glinting in his cold blue eyes. But this time, forewarned and better prepared, we will succeed. Yes, monsieur, I nodded. Monsieur Fogg consulted his ledger and tapped his pen. Perhaps this time, he said thoughtfully, a more direct route? Adventurer Phileas Fogg loses wager. Fogg blames failed mutiny en route to San Francisco, exploding Mississippi paddle steamer, and American train robbers for 87-day journey. Oh, jeez. 25,000 in debt? Jeez. Okay, well, that is 80 days, and there's now no more saves, so I could actually restart and do a new one if I wanted to. But alas, that is all the time I have for today. So I want to thank all of you who watched and for watching. And if you like this, hit the like button. And if you'd like to see more, subscribe, stay up to date. I'm still working on trying to get back to a regular schedule, which is going to be easier said than done. But it will happen eventually. Just some stuff has to, clear up for me. Anyway, thank you all again, and if you like this, check it out on Steam, links in the description, and see if you can beat my mark of 87 days, and if you can, I'd like to see it, and if you can't, I'd still like to see it, so just let me know. So, thank you all again, and I will see all of you next time. Bye.